Thank you, thank you. That's not good. It's Shiv here already gave.
No, I have not seen it.
Thank you. You're quite a knowledgeable man now. Before I start, a couple of people I want to thank Group Captain Vijay Kumar. I admired the thorough professionalism, the few conversations we had back and forth, the ease with which we planned everything. So I want to thank you for being such a great leader in that process. I want to thank Dennis for being my host here in Chennai during this short visit. Thank you. And before we jump into this fascinating topic, please, let's keep this interactive. Anything that's coming up for you that you feel like, there is some Q&A time in the end, but you don't have to wait until the end if there is something that's coming up for you that you want to raise, so that we can make this a little conversational. Is that a deal? Lovely. Just raise your hand and we'll have a conversation whenever you have a question. Good. I'm just wondering, did you all receive a little one-page questionnaire?
Yes.
You did? Did you have an opportunity to go through it?
Yes.
Have you answered it? My invitation would be, please take 2 minutes now and please answer. Done. Beautiful. I'll just give you a minute more if you want, just to answer those questions. And I want to keep the suspense. I'm not going to go into the questionnaire right now, but I'm going to actually take you through it later. But once you understand the substance of the leadership that I'm talking about, we'll come back. It's a rough questionnaire, a rough survey, but there is a lot of food for thought there. Just take 6 of them. No. It's for you. It's for your eyes only. You don't have to show it to anybody else, including, your spouse back home. If we want to focus on the negatives, we can spend a whole lifetime just trying to fix ourselves. Right now, simply just tick the boxes that relate to you most. And I want to start with a little personal story. Story of a time when I was in my own leadership quest. And this was late 1990s and early 2000s, when I was also very active in the corporate world. And like many young people, I was also very aspirational about being a successful leader. And you would know, if you're part of any decent company that has a decent leadership development program or management development program, you would notice one thing. One of the exercises you have to do in the management development program is you have to dig out a role model, preferably from the same industry, if not from business. You have to dig out a role model and you have to deconstruct that role model's values, belief systems, way of working, style, etc. And you have to embody that. And this is standard recipe in good management development programs. So I was here in one of the Fortune 500 corporations, and I had the assignment to do the same. So I started in the same industry, searching and searching and searching. I came across many leaders, but I was not really satisfied. So I broadened my search. I looked in the business world, identified another dozen very renowned business leaders, deconstructed them, and then I rejected. And I started looking beyond into non-profit and social leadership. That is where really my leadership transformation journey began. Because I noticed for myself that some of the contemporary leadership models, leadership practices were not sitting well with me. That is where I had the inspiration to actually go back to a lot of the ancient Indian wisdom, to start asking the deeper questions around. We talked about tamasic, rajasic, and sattvic. You gave the suspense away. But again, from a Western scientific perspective, what is it that we can do to understand different levels of leadership consciousness? And how can we harness that so that we can build future leaders? But then in early 2000s, I was not really that smart. I was basically thinking, how can I be a better leader? And there are many leadership models out there, but there is one consistent framework that is timeless, that will clearly dictate leadership development. I've personally been going deeper and deeper into that and practicing. So that's where I want to take you a little bit tonight. So to start with, I have one question. Who's this person? Who said that? Can you raise your hand? Very well. Yes, it is Machiavelli. What is he known for? Yes. He propounded, he stood for a certain type of management practice or leadership practice. Sorry? Oh, end justifies the means. You sound very well read. I'm just going to throw a few quotes here of the Machiavellian kind of consciousness. Talked about tamasic. You can read it for yourself. I just pulled this off the web. A few leadership styles or comments of style that relates to the Machiavellian leadership. And I have a great story, actually. The favorite one is what you have in the bottom. The one in the bottom is my favorite. I remember, this is a great story. I remember when I was actually in my first year MBA in one of the finest business schools in Europe. In the first year of my MBA, there was a leadership class. In the class, the leadership professor was telling me a story that appeared in the Harvard Business Review as a best-in-class leadership practice. In the United States, you know, the two major political parties are the Democrats and the Republicans. Now, both these parties, every year they have these big conventions with tens of thousands of people coming together. It's a big event. Like Barack Obama was introduced to the world in the convention. So every year they have this. Somewhere in the 60s or 70s, they were organizing for the Democratic Convention. And they had printed these flyers, and in the flyer, they had put some picture, a photograph that was taken by somebody. They put the picture in there, and 2 days before the convention begins, and these are like, you know, many hundreds of thousands of flyers printed, 2 days before the convention, somebody happened to notice, oh, that photo in there, that belongs to a certain photographer. And we forgot to ask permission or seek copyrights from the photographer before putting it on the flyer. And turns out a very poor photographer. So, a smart leader found a plan. He reached out to the photographer and he said, you know, we are going to have our convention very soon, and we are extending to you a great opportunity to showcase your work. How much are you willing to pay? And the poor guy, he said, like, you know what, I can't afford to pay anything. I'm sorry. Now, if you don't pay, we can't put you in. And the poor guy, he said, like, you know what, I'll borrow $250 and I'll pay. Apparently, that's what he did. My leadership professor brought this up as a case of, you know, best-in-class leadership. And everybody was sitting there listening to that. That didn't sit well with me. If this is best-in-class leadership, then we have failed somewhere. Manipulating a poor man out of his wealth that he doesn't have. I objected. I said, sir, I take exception to that. Ooh, that was a bad idea. That is, Machiavellian leadership is manipulating situations. And again, I'm being judgmental saying this, but you got to remember, that kind of a leadership was needed at a certain point of time in our collective history, when command and control was an important thing. And here I have a few characteristics of a Machiavellian leader. Somebody said, end justifies a means. I'm sure that these are not characteristic of any of your organizations, but perhaps, no. But we all hear every day the culture of organizations with Machiavellian leaders. And that is where actually the Machiavellian context was where the label human resources was first invented. Bless you. The idea is you are replaceable by you. You're replaceable by you. You're just a resource. You are functional. Our education system was developed based on that thinking. That the best we can do with our education system is to create a bunch of people who can do the same task in an industrial world. And if you cannot accomplish the task, then we replace you by you. Fear is the underlying emotion there. So Machiavellian leaders incidentally used fear as a management
management mechanism. I remember reading a study less than 10 years ago that said of the top 500 leaders that they studied in some corporates, 90% of the leaders actually manage using fear. 2/3 of the executives said that they operate under acute stress all the time. This is what we do to each other. That's Machiavellian leadership. There are some more characteristics I have. The end justifies the means. Let me just go on. The idea is to give you a holistic sense of the leadership style. A lot of politics is still in this paradigm. In fact, I'd say most is in this paradigm. I think probably not in Tamil Nadu. But just about everywhere, politics is very much in this paradigm. There's a massive shift happening, but the political consciousness often lags the social consciousness. Leaders who are still Machiavellian, even today, in a country like India, I'm sorry for my judgment. If you're good at that level of, that type of consciousness, you have a future. You will grow through the hierarchy. Which is the Machiavellian style. I don't want to say primitive. The important thing to recognize is there was a time consciousness, away from that manipulation type. Yeah. Thank you. Yes. Wow. This is the first time ever somebody actually catches it. This is Henry Ford. Henry Ford, started the assembly line, the mass production assembly line. And he said, you can have a color in whichever color you want. You can have a car in whichever color you want, as long as it's black. The focus there, this is easy. Difficult. In the 80s, there was this massive shift towards the thinking of productivity and performance. What was important is efficiency, multiplication. So if we can rapidly multiply, and there's a lot of symptoms, a lot of characteristics. I remember in the 90s, it was very, very big. The idea of TQM, Kaizen, and Six Sigma, Lean, all of this became a fashion at that time. Because all of this had a powerful impact on productivity. How could we minimize the input and maximize the output? And the two legends, Henry Ford, Jack Welch, they epitomized that consciousness. I remember Shiv used the word Rajasi. I'll break down that consciousness in a little bit. I have a great story of a time when this was in the mid-90s. I walked into an office in Norway. I walked in and I walked into the office of the CEO, and sitting, on the wall was written, "In God we trust." everyone else must show data. Really? He must have borrowed it then. Now, this was in Norway, mid-90s. I saw that. And the funny thing is, the reason why I was invited into the organization was to support them because the employee engagement was very low. They had high attrition rate, a lot of burnouts, pushback from the employees. You know, Norway and all that are countries with very flat hierarchies. So, there's no separate canteen for the big bosses and the employees. Everyone comes and eats in the same canteen. And there are no separate tables for the bosses and the rest of the people. You might be from a factory, you just take your food, go and sit wherever there's a seat. And you might be sitting next to the CEO, that's okay. Very flat, the hierarchy. There, people were rebelling against the leadership. And I was looking for a clue of what's happening there. And as I got on, when I walked into the office, I saw written there, in God we trust, everyone else must show data. And as I continued, as I started listening deeply to the leader, top MBA, all the people there, I'm hearing more and more, I was hearing that, they lived in this productivity paradigm. And in that paradigm, the humanness of human beings were not an important part. So naturally, employee engagement was down. There was a rebellion from people. And that tension was unmanageable for many people. Those are symptomatic, you got to remember, the highest ever stress level that organizational citizens have faced have been in the last 15 years. Highest ever. Even here, coming in here, I was hearing a case of some employee who's suicidal. When we focus on productivity and performance, where human beings are seen as machinery, you can expect that. But there are many good things to it. We get a lot of outcome. We can distribute prosperity. That is, if our heart is in the right place. We can. Some of the characteristics of the doing leader, I call it the doing consciousness, where doing is what matters. Productivity, performance is our mantra. Some of the characteristics there. I'm touching upon some of these things in a very holistic way. You can read this yourself, and I'm just wondering, a group captain, anybody who would like the slides, you're welcome to share it, so that you can dive into the details. And I'm also available if you have any interesting observations to share by email or questions to ask. Then whether I'm going to be in India or in Italy or someplace else, please don't feel limited because of that. Just send me a note. Because leadership is a topic where I love being part of conversations. Anyway, you can have the slides if you want, but let's go with it. There are many leadership models out there where we properly plot somebody's result orientation, balance it against the values of the company. That's all very much focused on the doing leadership. Just moving further. I don't know myself, maybe Shakti, you can say whether some of the copies of the book has arrived. They have arrived. So there are, the group captain has very generously extended the possibility for some of the copies of this book to be made available. And one of the things, when we were in that moment of exchanging and having discussions, I remember there was a news that reached me when I was in Europe that there was an attack on a number of soldiers, a suicide attack, where 40 soldiers lost their lives. And again, this is a measure of the group captain's generosity or big-heartedness that we came to the conclusion, you know what, whatever returns, whatever margins we make out of the books, we'll donate to the relief fund. So, yeah, I have 2 kids, very small. Yes.
Please clarify. The previous principles we taught, which you are taught. In God we trust. Everyone else must obey. The first part of it, does it reflect the attitude of the leaders, and the second part of it imposes certain duties to others. How do you join these 2 perceptions?
Can you elaborate? Can you help me understand more?
The first part of it says, in God we trust. Is it the perception of the leaders? The leaders say to the people, not the people who are managing the organization, that though we keep our trust in God, that everything will be all right.
Yes.
But that doesn't mean to keep quiet. You must do your business and show some progress. That here what you are making is progress. Your attempt, your effort. Is it the kind of interpretation or you have something else?
That also could be one interpretation.
No, could be. You tell me.
Yeah.
What is your interpretation?
What I discovered was their capacity, because they were so productivity driven, their capacity to see each other as human beings and trust a person just for who she is. That capacity wasn't there.
You said
They would trust.
you.
Yeah, please.
We trust in God. We have trust in God.
Yes.
Who has got the trust? Who is telling this? The management
Yeah.
or the people?
This was a quote that was on the wall of
Actually, explain what
the
does the
CEO.
quote mean?
It was a quote on the wall of the CEO's room.
Something that probably he believed in. And the message here, your good name is?
I am PM Rangaswamy.
Nice meeting you, sir. The message here is, not only did the CEO believe, there's a humor in that statement. In God we trust, everyone else must show data. So it's a beautiful humorous statement sticking on the wall. Beyond that, the whole organization, the leadership in the organization really believed that ethos. They believed that you cannot or nothing can be trusted except if there is proof or underpinning data. So that means if you say, I'm not feeling well, you're lying. Where's the doctor's report? I want data. If you say that I couldn't deliver something or I delivered something else, show me the proof. It was a reflection of the leadership mindset. And the amusing thing was, not only was it on the wall, that statement was actually in the heart of the management. There was a huge trust deficit that I can't, you're good, as good as proof of. So that is the That was the leadership mindset. Is that helping you in your reflection?
No, we will speak.
Lovely, lovely. Definitely. Good. Where was I? At the being leader. The being leader. My quest of leadership has really been beyond my leadership practices have been in the doing paradigm in the 90s, in the early 2000s. And yet, how this book came into being is a different story, where after searching all these leaders, studying their values and management practices, for me, it just wasn't enough productivity and performance. I just wasn't satisfied with that. I was asking myself, this is not sustainable, clearly. Because, in the Netherlands at that time when I was in leadership, I would see up to 30% of people at certain times, when we are coming to peak times, up to 34% of people taking leave due to stress. And because the labor laws are so mature in a country like the Netherlands, people could take leave. And many, many more did not take leave, but they were under stress. They were unfulfilled. They were lacking meaning and purpose in the work they do. So this was in the early 2000s, my quest of the next paradigm of leadership. What is the future of leadership? It cannot be like this. And my quest brought me to these four people. And at the time, there was not a lot of talk around, okay, the millennials, the new generation of people will become our future leaders. Nothing like that. The under 35 people or, people who were born since 1985. In another 15 years, they're going to be our leaders. They were not really, at the time, in the early 2000s, a force to be considered. The funny thing with millennials is, though, now, 15 years later, from early 2000s, we are really worried about millennials. We're totally worried about millennials. Some of you people who are top leaders, who have a recruitment to do, who have human capital to take care of, millennials must be keeping you awake at night. They're going to completely worry you if you're not worried yet. Because they're demanding a new paradigm of organizations. They're not interested in 9 to 5, by the way. You can try to force, like we've all been under force. We lived in command and control settings. Our bosses told us how to do things. They expected, you must be in the office at 8 or 9. And you cannot leave before 6. And then people kind of 7, 8, just to please the bosses. We are all going to be in for a great lesson from the millennials. For about 6 weeks, they will listen to you. They're not going to give you your notice because on the contract it said that, before you depart, you have to give 45 days notice. One day, Monday morning, the millennial will not show up. And you're like, what happened to you? On WhatsApp, you probably tried, assuming that you use WhatsApp. You try to call the person. After maybe 6 rings, maybe you will get an SMS saying, sir, sorry to inform you, I joined another job. What is happening? I'm seeing great evidence of a shift in management practice, organizational culture, and leadership. Massive shift. Bless you. They have no interest in a 9 to 5 thing. They're not interested in job security. They're not interested in paycheck. They might actually quit a job as an IT engineer. Yesterday, I had the great blessing of offering a talk at the TED Chennai. It's one of the TED speakers. And I remember many people I met, including some of the speakers, laugh about this. Many people I met who have actually gone to university, become an engineer, join a top IT company, bless you, they leave, they quit that job, and they start becoming a photographer or other such jobs. They would easily work in a Pizza Hut or a Domino's because they have greater flexibility. Maybe they get deeper meaning. But the new leadership is really going to be driven by them. Maybe they are not going to be the leaders, but they're going to force us to change our consciousness. Absolutely. They expect deeper meaning and higher purpose in what they're doing. If you can't you can't offer meaning, forget it. They're going to come, work for 4 weeks, 6 weeks, and then they'll be gone. And the amazing thing is, when the demography of our employees change, we also have to change our leadership style. And the future of leadership is the being leader. And I'm not saying that these 4 leaders that you see here actually embody fully that being consciousness. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, in their leadership, I noticed evidence of that beingness. I'm not even saying that these human beings were perfect. Well, show me a perfect person, then I'll retire. No. It's just that when it came to their leadership, they had a very profound strain of beingness. For them, really the who is what is important. They're not very interested in the what I do. These leaders would actually acknowledge people for who these people are, not what they did. Now, and that is very profound to think, because in the doing paradigm of leadership, what you did was important. Your productivity and performance was important. But imagine if you have the capacity to think deeper as a leader, you would even probably think, why? Why am I doing what I do? Or why is this person doing what he's doing? Why is she doing what she does? The motive is very important. Good leaders already think, why? Why is she coming to work? Most leaders that I've met, I'm not saying I've met a lot, most leaders I've met, they don't have the capacity to ask even the why. So imagine asking the who. That's even one level deeper. Shiv was referring to the Sattvic personalities or leaders. They focus on the who. And that's where the greatest levers, and I have many great stories of these breakthroughs by focusing on the who. Let me just lay out a couple of these characteristics of the being leader. Self-awareness, the really important one. Knowing, becoming aware of your thoughts, words, actions, values, etc. And the beauty of self-awareness is, if you're self-aware, you are aware of the other person's reality. That's automatic. Just by being aware of your thoughts, words, actions, and values, you'll automatically be aware of the other people around, other things around. Self-authored, they're not in a victim mode. You know what, today the weather is not very good. taking a break. Or I'm not doing something because my husband doesn't like it. Or the government restricts me. They are seldom in the victim mode. Mindfulness, a principle-centered, let me see, always their individual purpose, their personal purpose is aligned with a larger goal. It's not like, I'm here just to make my money. I'm here for something more profound. Yes? Help me understand, is there an outer self? Wow, I'm learning something new today. Yeah. For me,
Outer means perception of others about you, and inner means your perception of yourself.
right, okay. Wow. That clarifies things a little bit more. Thank you. Self-awareness, like I said, is you're present to yourself. Every thought that's passing through you, every words you speak, the choice of it, your actions, the motives behind it, your deepest assumptions, beliefs, values, you have awareness of it. The beauty of it is, when you are self-aware, you also become very aware of the dynamics around you. Like other people's perception of you. I'm not saying you will get affected by that, somebody's judgment of you. No, but you're aware of everything that's happening around you, whether it's the politics or the nuances of people's comments or other people's emotions. Extremely important.
Same as enlightenment.
Absolutely. At the 5th level of awareness, you're enlightened. So self-awareness can be, at the most primitive level. It can be instinctual, like a scorpion. Right from birth, the scorpion knows how to sting. Stings. It doesn't put any thought into this. Oh, this guy looks too bad to me. I'll give him a sting. Or she looks very nice. I won't sting her. No. Instinct. Instinct is at the lowest level of self-awareness. That means you're just a conditioned being. The highest level, the enlightened level, sattvic, you're fully aware, you're fully mindful. And of course, that's also a state of bliss, ananda. That is, the highest level is self-aware. That enlightenment. So yes, the highest degree, the 5th degree. I'll briefly take you through that if we have the time. But just to finish off that list, you can read that yourself. Within being at full potential, incidentally, my dear friend Mark from Switzerland is also here. About 9 years ago, we co-founded Being at Full Potential. And the focus of Being at Full Potential is to help realize human potential, whether it's among people, individuals, or groups, teams, organizations, institutions, whatever. That was the higher purpose that inspired us to launch Being at Full Potential. And we support many organizations also now in India. And here, the important thing we noticed, just to touch upon the self-awareness question, is your beingness, your self-awareness has got a direct link, and I'll come to a graphic in a minute, has a direct link to human potential realization. The higher in consciousness you are, the more productive you are. We also know, like a simple statement that every leader know, a happy employee is a productive employee. Yes. We've actually gone a bit beyond that. Fortunately, we did not have to invent it because it's already known in the science of the tamasic, rajasic, sattvic and all that. We knew We just had to research, do scientific research to come to the declaration that if I can raise your being, your beingness, your productivity performance goes up. Not by 5%, 10%, I'm talking 500%, 1000%. And we have some great stories to share around that. Stories of the MP3. You know the MP3 music that you have on your devices today? 15 years ago, it wasn't like that. 15 years ago, the organizational world was still focused on the CD, bless you, on the CD. And CD was doing a great job, but it was not enough because the royalties were drying up. So they were trying to invent something that was even better quality sound than CD. The only problem is the human ear cannot distinguish the difference between CD and CDX. Our ear is not capable of distinguishing the difference because it's already so good. It was somebody who was actually deeply working on self-awareness who actually had the breakthrough. You know what? Instead of upgrading music, why not we downgrade it? We make it simple, make it available in little devices. And I was personally involved in enabling something like that. Those kind of breakthroughs, and you know, MP3 today is everywhere. Every little electronic device has MP3 in it. It has become a standard. But could you have imagined that if you were thinking a 5% improvement in performance and engineered the CD, you would have invented the CDX, which was actually invented. But a 500% or 1000% improvement in performance is a breakthrough, is disruptive. That comes when we have a shift in awareness. And in being at full potential, we spend a lot of effort in trying to enable these shifts within organizations, teams, individuals, etc. And Mark here is a fellow accomplice in that work. Let me see. Yes.
My word is my law. According to me, it seems to be contradicting your previous, I may not be able to understand what it means. But for me, it means a little opposite to what the other.
Rather, he feels it's a rule.
Does it mean my way or highway? Or it means my way is I know better, maybe I can. What does it mean?
Great question. Great question. My word is my law, is the equity of my word, my promise. That means I don't carelessly choose my words. If I make a commitment, if I say, I will get this to you by Friday at 5 p.m., I'm going to do that not because I'm bound by fear, because you are my boss and I made a commitment and it'll come back into my performance appraisal. No.
I stand by my word.
Oh, exactly. Yes. Integrity. Yes. Good. Any other remarks, please? Just a quick view into some of the enablers of the being consciousness. That's a very busy slide. The idea is not to kind of take you through the whole thing. But again, no copyright, so go ahead, click. I'll also share the slides with you. But imagine, there's a leader, somebody that you know, who is embodying those 4 states that you see there. Imagine that. Being inspired, you talk about Sattvic and all that. Being abundant, being in service, and being aware. Just intuitively imagine, a leader who's embodying those 4 states. I'm sure that you will come to love and respect her or him. That must be an inspirational person. The 4 being leaders that I captured in the book were actually embodying those leadership states in their leadership. So they led from that state. So again, when we go to a business school, most business schools, there's a tremendous amount of focus on skill development. In the leadership program, let me develop your skills, whether it's communication skills, your strategizing skills, your problem-solving skills, all of this are important. But that is doing consciousness. If you want to create the future of leadership, then management programs, we put a lot of thinking into this in helping individuals, leaders, business schools rethink their leadership within organizations supporting leadership development institutes, in rethinking their management development programs, not by disqualifying the skills aspect, the behavioral aspects. They're important. You need them. But where is the next breakthrough coming from? And that is actually coming from the 4 being states. I'm looking at the time here, Shiv.
Another 5 minutes.
Another 5 minutes? Good. So we'll bring a couple of these things together, and after that, if you have any questions, any other remarks, we can start tying up everything. I put this picture in there because there's at least 1 or 2 people in this group. Oh, I see 3 people who've actually walked with me. People come to me, ask hey, can I join a program where I can step into my future of leadership, into my sattvic leadership? And every year, I take a group of 12 people on a walk, 8-day walk. Just walk with me. I'll give you a packing list, what you should pack. Walk with me. And when you come back, you would have shifted. Very often I'm asked the question, what is the transition from doing leadership to being leadership? Because we are living in the doing leadership paradigm. There's an amazing amount of focus on performance and productivity. And that there's a social tension we are in the midst of. Millennials are going to rebel in a big way. India might be maybe 5 years from now. West Europe, we are in the midst of a revolution in West Europe. It's incredible what's happening. The millennials are bringing in all the populist governments. They are basically, they stopped joining corporates. They would rather go and work in a McDonald's than, serving burgers than take a corporate job. They are very loud and very threatening. 5 years, you can hate me for this, but 5 years later when we speak, you would say, oh my goodness, Sujit said so. It's happening. There's a societal tension that's emerging where there's a new generation, 2 new generations of people. India, 50% of Indians are under 35. They brought in the current central government. They will decide again, once again, this time, next month or the month after, they will decide who will govern. We won't decide that. We don't have the power anymore for that. We don't have the reach. They have. There's a societal tension. There's a big question that often is asked to me. So how do we transition? In my heart, I understand it cannot continue like this, the way leadership is. How do I transition? Very often, most of the leadership, the leaders that I've met who are being leaders, they've actually stepped into their quest for being leadership only because of personal crisis. And I'm sure that you all know somebody in your life like that. Personal crisis. You had a death in the family, or a near-death experience yourself, or a divorce, something like that. And it creates a profound awakening. it doesn't have to be that way. We don't have to wait for a personal crisis before we will elevate into the future of leadership, the being leader. We can also do that by choice. And that walk I do is really to offer that rite of passage to being leadership. I think this might actually be a good place to leave it. There's also some more substance that kind of brings all these things together, but I also want to be respectful of the time, because unlike me, you all actually had a long day of work, and after that you come here. And I want to respect that. So, once again, I want to thank you for being so attentive. I've been seeing a lot of smiles that clearly says that, most of you were still awake. But, every time I myself dive into this, it becomes more real for me as part of my leadership journey. So I want to thank again Shiv and the group captain for giving the opportunity for me to be here.
Can you take some questions now?
Yes.
Time for questions.
Yeah. Please. Yes. Yeah. Can we have... I've been having a little fever these past couple of days. Yes, please. Yes.
Managing business, industry, this is where we are talking about leadership, is art, science and all. When it comes to the political and the social management, it is totally different, and there is no place for management, even if it's management guru also in politics.
Yes.
Why there is so much of gap? Because politically successful people has got a different strategy and leadership style. Maybe one who is faithful, who may be not educated also. So he comes to the power.
Yes.
And he is given, see, when it comes, we are managing millions, whereas they are managing billions without any leadership qualities. And how this can change, or what is your views on it? How it can save people?
Wow, it's a very deep question. It's got many layers to that question. Indeed, we've seen traditionally across the globe, the idea of dynasty politics. Concept of that is, leadership gives you a sense of reassurance. Oh, you're from that family, bless you. You're from that family, I trust you'll be okay. Oh, you're the son of that old prime minister or chief minister, whatever it is. It gives you a sense of reassurance. And people who have very little self-awareness, for them, these are the important indicators. I don't know the leadership landscape. I don't know if I vote for this person, what is the consequence of that? But instead, you have a good surname, or I've seen you on a film screen. It gives people a sense of reassurance, so they vote. The good news is, or depending on who you are, bad news is, the idea of entitlement politics is going to be over in 15 years. I'm being very generous by using 15 years. It won't be like that. Because millennials and the Gen Z people are extremely tuned in. The word is tuned in. They're fully abreast of the landscape. You know what is amusing? In the United States, there's going to be a presidential election happening next year. And the greatest, a person who has a good chance to become the president next year is considered a great feminist. It's a man. This person is considered the best person for equality of races. But he's a white guy. This person is a great champion of giving leadership to the young. He's like almost 80 years old. Why is this person so popular? That's because these millennials are extremely tuned in. They are looking at the person's policies, caliber, not the gender, not the age, not the caste. Politics is in for a big upheaval in India in the next 15 years. All the calculus around, I'm grooming my son, when I'm going to leave, I'm going to place him in power. All that calculus will be destroyed in 15 years. Because Viveka, reason, is going to hit. And where Viveka comes in, sentiment disappears. Right now, politics is all driven by sentiments, emotion. That will be gone with the millennials in power. So yes, sir, let's just patiently wait for another 10 years, 15. All the problems will be gone. But indeed, you pointed a very important thing. In business though, we have a bottom line motive. We have come together because we are going to co-create something together. And we have a bond, we have an agreement, a pact that we are together because we are co-creating something. And the beauty of that agreement is, if you're not delivering, I can gently, lovingly, or rudely ask you to leave. So that accountability is a powerful motive. But again, remember, accountability is characteristic of the doing paradigm. The future of leadership is not accountability, it is self-governance. Switzerland as a country where Mark comes from is a great example for me. Dennis was driving me through Chennai roads today, and I was saying the red light is on and people are just going. It's good. And of course, there are no accidents, that is to our credit, that in Chennai, you do all of this, there are no accidents. In Switzerland, you go. Doesn't matter whether there's a traffic light or not. You don't need any police to supervise. You don't need cameras, nothing. They're self-governed. Hence, you also have one of the smallest number of law enforcement officials in Switzerland. Because you don't need to enforce law where there is self-governance. In business, accountability is a feature that works extremely well, which is a characteristic, like I said, of the doing paradigm. Self-governance is going to come. Thank you.
Excuse me. You want to ask? I'll just finish. Thank you. Sujit, I want to call you as Sujit because we are in the millennial age. We are in the millennial age, so I'll call you Sujit.
Perfect,
And
please.
there are two slides that you displayed towards the end. The last slide is my first question, and the last but one slide is the second question.
Okay.
The last slide, if you can show for people, is you showed a picture where three people are walking.
Yeah.
You showed their back.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's good that you showed their back. So we don't want to know who they are in the front. But my question is, if you see that we see the picture, people are walking in three different positions. Out of which the two are walking together or side by side, and one is walking at the front. Now, in that scenario, who is the leader, and whether the leader has to always be in the front or at the back or at the side? This is one thought that I got. I wanted to clarify. And the last but one slide, you mentioned about something towards the end, the last column, and which triggered me to sense it's connected to servant leadership. Now,
Last
if you
column.
have some thought on that, you can just.
In the last slide, last column, I'm trying to remember.
Last but one slide.
The house.
Yeah.
Okay, there.
If you can just.
Can we pull that up? Thank you. And your good name?
Vardarajan.
Vardara. Can I call you Vardaraj?
Anything if you want.
Thank you. Yeah. great point you raised about the walk. I am facilitating the walk, and all 8 days I'm at the back. I never lead from the front. Great advantages of being in the back. I get a view of the process that each of these 12 persons are going through. Some of you men have walked with me. I see at least 2 or 3. And maybe you can connect with one of them later. I would be available if you want me to sign any copy before we say goodbye. I would be available around, just so that you know. But you can also use that opportunity to speak if you want to one of them. I'm very happy being in the back. Else but snakes and crocodiles, but I can see what's in front of me. It doesn't diminish my power. I feel extremely powerful. And let me see, was this what you were referring to, Vardarajan?
Being in service.
Yeah, being in service. That is, you all know this is the easiest inner state. You all know it. You all live this state, I'm sure. Perhaps in bits and pieces. This is a state where all your words, your actions, your thoughts, everything is in service of a greater good. You have no attachment to returns or rewards. You're doing something, you're serving because of the pure joy of serving. And most, how you will recognize is the way you are in service with your children, or your parents, or your spouse. You're not expecting anything in return. You're actually serving because that service brings you immense joy. Excuse me. That is the state of being in service. Is that helping you? Lovely.
And also on servant leadership.
Servant leadership. The inner state of being in service, that is the emotion or the state of servant leadership. A lot of literature that I've read in the West around servant leadership focuses so much about the actions of a servant leader and much less about the inner consciousness, the sattvicness of the leader. There's an opportunity to bring, have a greater conversation around the inner state, the consciousness of servant leadership.
Also staying at the back also determines servant leadership from a way, in a way.
I love the depth of this question. It's very important to separate the doingness from the beingness. If you're in servant leadership, depends on the scenario. You might be in the front, you might be in the back, you might be in the middle, you might be on the side. The actions or the situations doesn't matter. What matters is the inner state. And it can express itself in many different ways. It cannot be one prescription like, oh, you're a servant leader. That means to prove that you're a servant leader, you have to be in the back. That's like, so then I can give you a stamp that you're a servant leader. No. Servant leadership is a spirit. It's an attitude. Lovely. How are we? Yeah. I want to look at Shiv here.
No.
Thank you. Yes, please.
Mahabharata and all, the leader used to be in front, back, something.
Okay.
General Senapati.
Yeah. Senapatis often could also be in the back. Indeed.
No, I just have a question relating to being a leader. Today we live in sort of ICT age, I should say information, communication and technology.
Yeah. Can you just hold for a second? If you don't, that leadership questionnaire, that sheet that you have, please don't hand it in. It's not a survey of anything. It's to give you a sense of where you are in your leadership journey. So don't give it away to the person who's standing at the door, okay? I'll just come to that in a minute. So because I noticed somebody give that sheet away. Yeah, yes.
So my question is, in a nutshell, we being in a knowledge-driven age or something, how do you call it, or the being leader, how does he utilize or what do you call it, assimilate this information-driven or knowledge-driven age, the current age I'm talking, information age.
Yeah, the
So
sound.
how does a being leader,
Ah.
or the state of being, how does that leader utilize or assimilate this current, I should say, knowledge age?
You mean in the information age? You know, I mean, that's a great question. You heard the word VUCA. VUCA. And VUCA is short form for volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. VUCA, world. The organizational paradigm and society is going to become exponentially VUCA. Going to be very turbulent. Going to be infinite number, tens of thousands of variables to handle for a leader. I see at least one business school that I visited. What they're doing is they're trying to create what they call sophisticated leaders. Sophisticated leaders are leaders who use artificial intelligence and something else that was there, a blockchain. These kind of assets to be on top of all that uncertainty, all that variables. The best person to lead in the VUCA world will be a being leader. And that's not going to be a person who has algorithms in her head. It's going to be a person who will be completely settled in an unsettled world. So all the variables that happen in the that's happening in the information age, you would have to practice allowing. You should be just thriving on chaos. Let chaos happen. There is a system there, it'll emerge. I don't have to control. The young folks will. They'll find solutions, they will offer answers. How can I allow? So it's going to be very, very important in the next wave of the information age. It's going to be important for us because otherwise we will completely break down. If we cannot be in our being, we'll become obsolete. We'll get heart attacks and die. That is going to be the amount of stress. And just as we close, could you put the slides back? You know, I wanted to put up the questionnaire answers with your permission quickly. Can you move down to the leadership? Down. No, the other way. Down. You don't have to go anywhere there. Remember, you have the slides. There. The previous question? Previous one? The previous one? Yeah. You have your questions there. The sheet in front of you. Please put the score that you have on the right against the questions that you ticked. So you ticked a few questions, 6 of them. Put a score that you see. Like, you see, if you tick this question, then put a score of 2 against it. Just put that number. Just put that number next to your question. So remember, the invitation was to tick 6 of these answers that best represent you. Now just put the score here, you see, against the answers that you ticked. So this is just 1 to 6. I'll give you a few seconds and then move to the next set. I'm just keeping it a secret right now.
Maybe not yours, but I'm saying.
I want to come to that in a minute. Please put those scores against the answers that you ticked. Okay, I'll go to the next one. That's question 7 to 12. Please put the scores that you see on the right. Those scores. If you ticked anything there, just the score against that which you ticked before. Not all of them. Just the ones you ticked. Remember this for your eyes only. This is not for anybody else to see. It's only for you to do a little inner check. And here it is. This is the last set of questions. If you ticked any of those questions before, then put the score against it. Done. And lastly, just to give you a little sense of where the center of gravity of your leadership style is at this moment. Remember, there are no wrong answers. No wrong answers. Is just to give you a sense of, your unconscious style of leadership. Just for some thinking.
Is this a transition from those age, the previous age and the current age, or future? Is this what the leadership style is moving towards?
Yes, the future of leadership is going to be the being leader one. Yeah, or you become obsolete. Thank you.